This video is going to take a look at experiments. So what we're going to be able to do here is we're going to be able to recognize the difference between what is called an observational study and an experiment, to know some of the terminology, and to be able to design the experiment for different situations. So first off, an observational study is based on data in which no manipulation of factors has been done. So here's an example. So researchers linked this increase in breast cancer in Italy to this dioxin that was released by industrial accident in 1976. Well, here's the thing. They couldn't go in and actually release the toxic chemical. They went in and they found 981 women who lived near the site. They were under age 40 at the time. And they just studied the number of them that developed breast cancer at an unusual age. So they used medical records. They used data that was already there. That's what's called an observational study. Versus an experiment, where we have these three main principles. There's control. So we control aspects of the experiments that we know that may or may not have an effect on the response. But that's not what we're after in terms of what we're studying. We've randomized the assignment of the subjects, and basically what that is going to do is it's going to allow us to really so this randomization, excuse me, what that's going to do is it's going to even out effects that we don't control. It's going to take the human element out of it, if you think about it that way too. Like, we don't have as much control as we'd like, which means that we can actually study the issue at hand. Replication, big word for just repeat it over and over again, right? You think about medical studies, they don't just do the study once and then release the new drug. They make sure that they're ensuring that they have significant results. So they're going to replicate it over and over and over again. So some of the other terminology associated with experiments, or what's called a factor, and that's your explanatory variable that we're manipulating, right? The one that we're trying to get to explain, your x value. A response would be the variable that is measured in response. So maybe we're trying to do some kind of like pain relief, so we give them different dosages of medicine as the factor, and then their response would be their pain relief. Experimental units are the individuals that the experiment is done on. So if it's a human, we would call them subjects. A treatment is the specific experimental condition applied to each unit or subject. So that's where we give people the drug. That's the treatment. We have a control group that receives no treatment or placebo, typically, right? In my experiment that I'm kind of talking through here, we split our group and half the people get the new drug, half the people would get basically a sugar pill, a placebo, and recall that a placebo has no effect. Blinding means that the subject is unaware of which group they're in, and that's important, right? Because you don't want, if somebody knows that they're getting the sugar pill, they're probably not going to take it. What we're really trying to see is whether or not our new drug has an effect. Double blinding actually can play a role sometimes too, because sometimes it's better if the researcher doesn't know which treatment is being used. So there's a third party that's giving out the new drug versus the placebo, and then they collect all the data, and then that third party would come back and say, people 1 through 6 actually got the new drug, people 7 through 20 got placebo, and then 21 through whatever, however they assigned it. That way the researcher can't try to give people certain things either. So quick breakdown, what's the difference? So let's figure out what we're looking at. So researchers have linked an increase in the incidence of breast cancer. This is exactly what we talked about. They're looking at old records, right? Medical records. So that would be an example of an observational study. Another example is diet or exercise effective in combating insomnia. So some believe cutting out desserts can help alleviate the problem. Others recommend exercise. So we have 40 volunteers who have insomnia that agree to participate. Half were assigned to a special no dessert diet. The others continue to eat desserts as usual. Half of the people in each of these groups were randomly assigned to exercise programs, others did not. So now all of a sudden, we're implementing some type of treatment. There are treatments being involved. So the fact that I see treatments, and it looks like there's a little bit of control, like a control group, in the fact that some people just aren't changing anything they're doing. So the fact that there's a treatment and there's a control, that tells us that we're looking at an experiment. Scientists at this pharmaceutical are investigating the effectiveness of an herbal compound on the common cold. So they expose people to the cold virus, given the herbal compound or the sugar solution. So all of a sudden, here we go. Here's a treatment. Here's the placebo sugar solution that does not have an effect. And so we got a treatment, we got some control, and then a few days later, so we have an experiment. And what they're doing, in terms of being able to control this thing, what they could do is use people of relatively the same age. That way, the health status, uh, if you think about it, if we used some older people or some really, really young people, their immune systems might be a little bit more compromised. So we'll try to use people of the same age. That's a way to control this thing. Randomly determine who gets the herbal compound, who gets placebo. There are ways to do that. We'll talk about it. And replication. So make sure we use more than 2 people in each group. So here's what we can do. Completely randomized design. We take, say there's 500 people. We got 250 that go each way. So maybe we number all of our subjects. We pick 250 using like a random number generator to send to the top group to get the herbal compound, and then the other 250 get the sugar solution, and then we compare reactions. Another way to do this random assignment, maybe as each person walks through the door, we flip a coin. Heads, they get herbal compound. Tails, they get sugar solution. And we just keep doing this until one group has 250 people, and then everybody else goes into the other group. Look at another one. Athletes have suffered from hamstring injuries were randomly assigned to 1 or 2 exercise programs. Static stretching versus a program of agility and trunk stabilization. So the control here, let's use only the athletes, and maybe athletes of about the same age, so maybe all high school athletes, maybe all professional athletes, maybe all collegiate athletes. That way they're kind of all in the same boat. If we're mixing high school athletes, college athletes, professional athletes, there might be some other issues involved that we don't want to deal with. So we'll randomly determine who gets stretching, right? And those, it's actually already mentioned here. And then we'll use many subjects, right? Again, we're not just going to use 3 or 4 people. We'll use quite a few. So again, we'll take 100 people. We'll randomly assign them. One gets the static, one gets the trunk stabilization, and at the end of the day, we're going to compare. So sometimes we can foresee that there are issues beforehand, which is why we would use blocking. And so what it's going to do, if we know that there's some kind of attribute that we can't control, we can do what's called blocking. So we'll set them up into homogeneous groups and then split the groups from there. So things like gender could have effects if we do experiments. Age could have an effect. Where someone lives, what they do. So here's one particular one. So a dog food company wants to compare a new calorie food with a standard dog food to see if its effectiveness in helping inactive dogs maintain a healthy weight. So they found several dog owners that want to participate, and they have small dogs, medium dogs, large dogs. And so they're going to supply the owner of each size dog with 1 or 2 foods. So the owners are going to give just their dog the food, and then they're going to check the dog's weight. Well, here's the one element of control is the dog owners are saying, hey, we're just going to use this food, and we can randomly determine which dog gets each diet, and we want to make sure that we have a few dogs in each group. Well, here's the idea. Different dog sizes could have different effects. So what we're going to do is, since the size of the dog may impact their weight and how much weight they gain, lose, we're going to go ahead and block each size of the dog. So what that'll look like, let's say we have 30 dogs. Well, 10 small, 10 medium, 10 large. That's already done. That's not random. You don't randomly assign the dogs to their block. They're automatically into the block. We think that the size of the dog could have an effect, so let's take that out of the equation very beginning. Now we can randomly assign 5 small dogs to the regular, 5 to the special, 5 medium dogs to the regular, 5 special, right? So here's where the random assignment is occurring all of a sudden. So we put them into their blocks, and then once we know we've got that kind of taken care of, at the end of the day, we'll compare the weights of the small dogs on the 2 different diets, compare the weights of the medium dogs, and compare the weights of the large dogs. And what we might find when all of a sudden we get to this part where we're comparing stuff, we might all of a sudden see that the food's not effective for small dogs, but it's very effective for large dogs. Or maybe it's the most successful in maintaining weights on medium dogs. But if we hadn't blocked that at the beginning, we might not have seen that. Another type of blocked design is called matched pairs, where each subject or each person serves as the block. So an example where this could be played out, we got this boot manufacturer that wants to conduct an experiment to compare this new method of waterproofing with a current. So They don't change the appearance of the boots, and the company recruits 100 volunteers in Seattle. This is a measure of control right here. Everybody's in the same place with about the same day-to-day experience if they live in the same city, right? And also it rains a lot, which is good because they're trying to check waterproofing. So they're gonna use this waterproofing, wear the boots for 6 months as they normally would, and at the end of 6 months, the boots will be returned and evaluated for water damage. Now, what we have to worry about now is all of a sudden we have controlled on some levels patterns of footwear by going to the same city, so people have about the same experience. But the issue here is each person could do something different, right? If you are a construction worker, you're outside a lot more in your boots than maybe somebody that works in an office that likes to wear boots with their suit or whatever. So the issue there is if somehow in the random assignment all the outside workers get the new waterproofing, all the inside workers get the new waterproofing, we haven't controlled for the different factors of their day-to-day life. So what we want to do is we're going to block where each person will be a block. In other words, each person is going to get not only the old but the new. So here's how that could play out. So we'll do random assignment to the two groups. So we got group A and group B. So both groups are going to get both treatments, but group A will be the left boot is waterproof, right boot is regular. Group B, right boot, left boot. And now all of a sudden we've taken the issue of day-to-day life out of the equation. Each person has each kind of boot, and so now we can really take a look at, is the new method actually working better to protect the boot, or is it someone's day-to-day life that's protecting the boot? So at the end of the day, we'll compare the footwear, and then we can see which waterproofer is better.